Good morning. This is Dave Whorton. Welcome to the Evergreen Experience 2020 on this Friday, May 22nd, 2020. The goal of this conversation is to provide real-time insights into the Evergreen leaders' experiences and innovations in this period of crisis, uncertainty, and rapid change. Today, I'm joined by John Creighton, President and CEO of High Plains Bank, and Eric Wallace, President and co-founder of Hand Brewing Co. John and Eric, who both live and lead businesses in Colorado, will speak to the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on their businesses, the innovations and adaptations that they have tried, their view on the future of their industries, and how Evergreen principles have guided them through this. With that, let's get started. Welcome, John.
Hi there. Morning, Dave.
Welcome, Eric. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for joining me, guys. Really appreciate you taking the time. Well, John, could I kind of put you on the spot first and just have you tell us a little bit about you and your business?
So we're celebrating 100 years of family involvement with High Plains Bank. My grandfather came to work for the bank, I realized the other day, in the wake of the Spanish flu pandemic in late 1919. And 100 years later, because of this pandemic, we hired our first fourth generation employee. My daughter came on board to help answer phones, which we still do. This is a second career for me. I had for about 25 years, did public policy consulting and lived in Washington, D.C. and worked around the country. In banking terms, High Plains Bank is relatively small. We're just over 200 million in assets. We're primarily a commercial bank. We have 85% of our portfolio is in commercial lending, ranging from ag to commercial real estate to construction to lines of credit.
Great. Thanks, John. Eric, same question for you.
I'm an Air Force brat. So my dad was career military, Army, and then Air Force. I've lived all over the world. I've got a long list, and anytime I run into a military kid, we compare lists usually. See where we've crossed over, but I myself joined the Air Force and went to the Air Force Academy back in 1980 and ended up serving all around the world as well. So I've lived in Japan, I've lived in Italy twice, I've lived in Germany twice, I've lived in Turkey, traveled extensively for work and pleasure. I'm married to a woman from Northern Italy who's now naturalized American. We've got 3 kids. And when I got out of the Air Force, I was living in Italy. I worked over there for a while, business that my father-in-law owns. And then we moved back to the States and basically drove from New Orleans all the way to Alaska and back, visiting friends and places, looking for a hometown, because I never had a hometown. I'd moved so many times. And ultimately ended up here in Longmont, ran into a couple of buddies from the Air Force Academy. I was living in one of their basements, and convinced the other guy who was a home brewer to teach me how to brew. We started brewing together, and then I convinced him that this little microbrew thing was gonna be something someday. So we started our brewery back in September of '93. We put together a business plan and raised a little bit of friends and family capital, kind of your classic startup, completely undercapitalized. I think once we got the brewery built and we brewed our first beer, we were down to something like $27 in the bank. And we understand cash flow like pros. We're very cash flow focused. We're very community focused. We really dug in deeply because like I said, I never had a hometown, and was like, this is going to be where we are. We're going to get as deeply involved in the community as possible, support as many community functions as we can. We're going to brew beer that has flavor and character. We're going to try to change the world one pint at a time. And 27 years later, we're one of the top 50 craft brewers in the country.
That's terrific. Well, Eric, just to follow up on that then. So what was it say your business going into the kind of COVID crisis and shutdowns?
What's it going through right now?
I'm sorry, what was the state of the business before?
Before. As as you may have noticed, in the last 5 or 6 years, we've gone from 2,000 and something breweries in the country to over 8,000. So it's not exaggerating to say it's gotten quite crowded in the space. And we basically have been talking about the next crunch for quite a number of years. We went through a really big shakeout back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when a lot of the breweries got overextended, and then prices fell through the floor and hundreds of breweries went out of business. And basically, the number of operating breweries over about a 5-year period declined. And so we know that's possible. Most breweries that are operating right now don't realize that that's possible. So we've been talking about that, and we've also been preparing. You know, Evergreen's a natural principle. We intend to stay independent, not have to sell out. And we've been building a strong balance sheet for the last several years to be ready for the crisis, which we thought was going to be a competitive crisis, and it is. However, it also definitely gave us a firmer foundation than probably many businesses, because we were braced for impact. We just didn't expect this kind of impact.
Got it. Thanks, Eric. We'll come back to you in just a moment. John, how about you? How are things going at the bank before this all came down in early March?
We were, and we still are, in a really good place. We've had over the last 3 years 15% annual organic growth, and for a bank, that's a lot. We also were investing in significant growth, plan to grow quite a bit in 2020, 2021. We increased our staff by 20% over the last 5 months, and we tripled our technology spend over the last 18 months. But at the same time, in January, we actually started to prepare for a recession. We decided to boost our reserve for loan loss by 25% over this year. And that's not because we had any foresight of what was coming. We're just paranoid bankers 11 years into an up economy.
Good. That's great. So John, so kind of what happened for you when things started kind of developing in late February, early March, and how much impact did it have on your business? And we'll cover kind of how you adapted to it in just a moment, but just curious, you know, people have had a whole range of impacts on their business. And so for a bank, your bank, what was the impact on you?
We, thanks in part to Eric, we had a jump start on this compared to our peers. You know, Eric was telling us about his sales in Washington State in late February. We have one of our key people here has a son that goes to the University of Washington. Mm-hmm. So we knew something was happening. When I say jump start, I'm talking 4 or 5 days. Mm-hmm. But we started making decisions a week before our peers. And so for our staff, we were kind of rocking their world about why are you taking such dramatic action so quickly? And so that took a little bit of management. You know, from a financial standpoint, we were in really good shape, but in terms of the impact that we had on our employees, very quickly. But, you know, we can maybe come back to it, but we really, what turned out to be, we took a 3-phase approach to this pandemic.
Well, let's hit that. Go ahead. And we'll come back to Eric in just a moment.
Yeah. So we kind of knew something was coming. So on March 10th, the day that our governor, we had a meeting in the morning and asked our loan officers to start contacting customers to offer them 90-day extensions. As we were having that meeting, the governor was going on having a press conference announcing a state of emergency for Colorado.
Hey, John, just to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
You said you proactively offered extensions. You didn't wait till customers requested?
We decided to contact them because, again, we think some of our customers they weren't paying attention or none of us really knew this was coming. We didn't think a lot of our customers might know what's coming at them. And so we wanted to let them know that when they did realize what was hitting them, we were ready to give them a 90-day extension right out the bat.
And you sound like a banking partner. Clients, wow. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, that's fine. Yeah. A week later, March 16th, we actually decided to close our lobbies the day before the governor announced that restaurants had to be closed. And that's one of the things that just kind of shook up our staff. I'd like to say we did it really well, but what we didn't inform our staff is, okay, we're going to half staff, we're reducing our staff by 50% in the branch. We went from 4 people to 40 working at home. But we forgot to tell the folks that stayed in the branch, you can't provide the same level of customer service with half the people. And so they were running themselves ragged until we realized that we need to moderate expectations. So we did a few things there. We redesigned our customer service response into a rapid response team, where the phone call comes in, it's redirected, and then we actually call our customers rather than having them wait on hold. And for our staff, we assured them that you're going to get full pay regardless of productivity. We we prepaid our normal year-end bonus, and then we also added 80 hours of PTO time. And then the third phase is what I think of now as the already infamous PPP, and we're still in phase 3.
Got it. And we'll talk a little more about what that meant.
It was the most disruptive of everything that happened.
Okay. Well, let's come back to that in just a moment. So, Eric, industry was under some stress already. You were clearly talking with John and letting him know that things were starting to happen. So let's talk a little about kind of what was the impact on your business of kind of what happened in February and early March.
The canary in the coal mine, as John said, we started seeing draft orders disappearing off of our order board. Washington State was the very first one, and then they started to pop up. So, and you said something earlier that John's bank sound like a really good, they work as a partner bank. It's like, absolutely they do. They're a great bank. And we knew that when the PPP popped up, that's who's we're gonna be working with. So that was clear. And we have 3 different banking relationships, and these are the guys that had their act really together. And I know that at least one of our other banks really had their act together as well. But we love High Plains. So we started seeing on-premise shutting down. We knew that was going to have an impact. We started going to cash where we could, making sure that everything was secured. We started to ask to the banks that we had to ask to defer. We asked them. Some banks were proactive, as we said, as John said. I think that's unusual. We refinanced some stuff because interest rates obviously plummeted as the crisis began to set on in March. We've already refinanced a couple, one significant loan, and we will refinance others once the deferral periods roll over and everything washes out. So first steps were to make sure that the fortress, the balance sheet fortress, was as strong as we could make it really, really quickly. Then we started looking at what do we think is going to happen to sales. We were meeting on a daily basis, recasting budgets and forecasts. And basically we settled on, well, what if things drop to half of what we expect? So we modeled that out. We cut expenses wherever we could cut. And then the last and single biggest chunk is payroll for us. We have 88 employees, and said, well, if the markets are shutting down, who's critical and who can we have set at home? So we went through and basically furloughed. And then once we'd furloughed and cut hours, then we said, what's left? We saw the size of the task at hand, and we implemented a pay cut for everyone remaining. So everyone in the company, whether you were working full-time or part-time, was working for partial pay. That got everyone's attention really quickly. We were literally in a meeting working on finalizing some of that, watching Polis, our Governor Polis's press conference, when he said effective immediately all bars and restaurants and breweries are closed for on-premise service. I walked downstairs literally, it was shortly before, I think 6 p.m. and said, last call, people. The bar, our tasting room's right below my office. So we immediately locked it down. I think the official order was for the next morning at 8. And like the spirit is like, everyone was already on edge. We'd already implemented new protocols for how do you host people, cleaning and sanitizing and trying to keep people spaced and all of that kind of stuff. So our heads were already in that game, and it just came rolling in. So we were on a really full big lockdown. We had reduced hours by about, I think comprehensively about 40%. We had a transition week and then 3 weeks of full shutdown. And then we tried to delay our PPP loan as long as possible, working with John and his team. And the rules wouldn't allow us to push it as far as we wanted to, because having salespeople in the market when the market's closed doesn't do you a whole lot of good. But we delayed it as long as we could, and we've now been on the PPP for 5 weeks. So we brought back a big chunk of our people. We're getting projects done, and we've ramped hours back up probably by about half of what we cut them, but not fully, because everybody's situation is different, and some people are better off hanging out at home or working reduced hours anyways. So it's a mixed bag. The program was designed for maximum speed without regard for the bleed and the waste that was going to be inevitable to do something that quickly.
And Eric, you've got kind of different lines of your business, right? You have distribution of bottles and cans, you have distribution of kegs, you have on-premise. How are those various parts of your business done through this?
About 10% of our margin probably comes in from our tasting room. That's direct sales. It's basically a really, really nice setup that we got right on the river here. About 30% coming in from draft.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can imagine, our draft sales went from 6 figures to $1,000 a month. Significant bang on us. And then package sales, we sell bottles and cans pretty much nationwide. Comprises 60 some odd percent of our business there. So that business has ticked up a little bit from the front end. What we're seeing rings at retail. However, you got to understand the timing for a brewery like ours, which 60 something percent of our sales is stout driven. The biggest stout drinking festival of the entire year is St. Patrick's Day. We had loaded the pipeline all the way, wholesalers, retailers. We're at maximum inventory for the year. And the day that we got shut down here in Colorado, the 16th of March, the day before St. Patrick's Day. So you're not seeing the lift that we're seeing at the front end in retail, like a low double-digit lift on package, is not translating into orders yet, because we still got a lot of stuff out there in warehouses across the country. So we are just starting to see some draft orders, literally like an 8 keg order going up to Wyoming. And our Colorado wholesaler, our biggest single distributor partner, isn't even allowed to order draft yet. However, it looks like at the end of next week, Governor Polis is going to announce restaurants may open. So we have phantom order on the board, preparing to have to ship them some draft starting next week, which is a great sign. I'd love to get some of that business back, because it's hard to operate a company at 60% revenue when you're tooled for 100.
Great. And Eric, I want to come back to you in just a moment to talk a little bit about your foundation, okay? But so John, PPP, you guys, I guess you probably weren't cutting hours at that point, were you?
We did not cut hours. Yeah, the PPP, I can say unequivocally that no one on our team wants to go through what they went through the last 6 weeks. But in many ways, this is the best thing that could have ever happened to us. we've got, as I mentioned, 20% new staff. There's no better team building exercise than to work 14-hour days together, 7 days a week, to do something on behalf of your community. And so we did more bonding, and we know each other in a more intimate way than we've ever known each other. The second thing is it blew up all barriers to thinking about innovation because we had no choice. And bankers hate innovation, hate it. But this blew up all barriers to that. And we completely redesigned how we communicate with our customers, completely redesigned how we open new accounts, how we process loans. And we did literally a year's worth of, we opened as many accounts in the last 6 weeks as we did in all of 2019. And without a single person walking into our lobby. So we created all kinds of new ways to streamline our work that we'll carry forward with this. And I think, two other things, it really revealed to us the internal infrastructure that we need to focus on to continue to grow that we may not have noticed in the past. Everything from, we don't have good collaborative software to be able to work on things, and we've got the whole team working on documents. You need better software. That's just one example. But also it is this is the best marketing we've ever done. We were able to differentiate ourselves from corporate banks in a way that we never would have been able to. And there, as folks know, there is tremendous inertia to change banks. You have to really, really, really hate your bank and really be frustrated with them for more than 48 hours to consider moving your bank accounts. Well, PPP created that 48, 72 hours that led people to change banks. So that we think will give us a real boost going forward.
And John, I think you shared with me the other day too, that your average loan is fairly low. So you guys were really reaching out to help small business, doing what the program was intended to do, I think.
Yeah, we did 50% of our loans were less than $25,000. And so we have the businesses with 3, 5, 10 employees. And, if you have a $25,000 loan, if you're a sole proprietor, that's roughly $50,000 or it's not a lot of income. So these are a lot of the folks on Main Street. It's the barber shops, it's the massage therapists, as well as the restaurants and the craft brewers. So we did the gamut.
I think your community is lucky to have you, John.
Well,
that's pretty awesome. Hey, Eric, talking about community, you've been doing some pretty innovative stuff yourself with your foundation and partners. And you want to kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, we've got some cool stuff going. Number one, I'm referring a lot of people to John's bank. Like, your bank sucks. You need to call High Plains. And so I'm happy to hear that they are gaining clients. I know that a number of people, ask for references, so we're happy to provide those. Yeah, we have a foundation that we used, and when this thing first started blowing up, we started initially with a thing called Stream for a Cause. So there's a little place right down the street from here. That's when you could have 10 people maximum in a space. So we'd get a band in there, we'd get a sound guy, and we would produce live stream concerts for people while they were staying at home in exchange for just donations. So we had some sponsorship. We had a number of sponsors help us out, including John's bank. One of John's key guys, their SBA expert dude, is actually on our foundation board. So you can see it's a little bit of a incestuous relationship here. But we started off with that. Then when they shut that down, we were struggling, like, what else can we do? We always have been trying to give back to the community. Our large fundraiser events are getting shut down. We just missed being able to do Leftapalooza, which is a local tribute band. We were going to have 20-something bands live in the park through the whole course of the day and try to raise a bunch of money that goes back into the community. That blew up. So a couple of our people, Eric Keene, who's the executive director for our foundation, he works in the marketing department for us. And our controller and department manager for accounting and admin, Mark Bowman, who's a GABF medal winning home brewer. He runs his home brew club in Loveland. They got together and came up with this thing called Colorado Strong. It was a pale ale. So they created Colorado Strong Pale Ale. Mark Bowman wrote the recipe. We got a hold of the Guild and asked them to partner with us. The Guild has over 200 something breweries out of the 400 operating in Colorado are members of the Guild. And we launched a campaign. We solicited a number of sponsors for packaging, ball packaging is helping us out. Sticker Giant, local company here in town, helping out with labels. The Root Shoot, which is a local, they're a farmer malting, micro malter just north of us in town in Colorado Hops. Getting all of these different companies together to help create an initiative where our foundation, using their support, provides free brewing and packaging material to now over 140 breweries have signed on throughout Colorado to brew a version of the recipe that we provide. So we give them all the raw materials for free. A lot of these companies are completely strapped and really have no way to pay for anything right now. This gives them something to brew, sell, and a marketing campaign that umbrellas over the entire thing. It's been picked up. There's hundreds of millions of impressions on this thing nationwide. It's kind of really cool to watch the whole thing go viral during a viral pandemic. And in a number of breweries that produced it, it instantly became their best-selling beer. Some breweries have already sold out of it and are asking if they can brew it again, which is basically, can we get them some more materials? I'm not sure where we stand on that, but the way that works is they get to sell it. The raw material, the suppliers are getting intros to new customers. So they're really, really jazzed about this. The breweries are brewing something that their cost of goods sold are reduced just down to labor effectively. And we ask for 20% of their proceeds come back as a donation to our foundation that we can then turn around and support local businesses, especially on premise and other people on the front lines, by buying gift certificates, supporting our customers, and then giving away those gift certificates, oftentimes discounted by our accounts, to people who have been severely impacted by the pandemic. So we're trying to create this series of waves and recycle that cash through our economy as many times as possible.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, Eric. That's really cool.
It's pretty fun.
So let me ask you, how are you feeling today versus maybe that first week of March, last week of February?
Well, I'm not an even keel kind of a guy. You can ask John. When I'm up, and when I'm down, I'm down. I'm pretty up today. There was a couple weeks ago, I was standing in the tasting room, which is basically a little beehive of our skeleton crew of our beer tenders, because we're doing delivery and takeout as much as we can do to try to keep the lights on. And I looked at Tony, our tasting room manager, and said, man, I feel like I trained for this. All of a sudden, I went to USAFA, the Air Force Academy. So I'm thinking, this is going to be a multi-year thing. I know I can do 4 years of really kind of shitty experience because I've already done that. So emotionally, mentally, I know that I've got that, and it feels like, we're going to war. So, in a strange way. So let me think about that mentality. Let me try to prep the team for a long slog and make sure that everyone's minds are resilient and focused on the long-term success, and understanding, yes, we have built a little fortress the best we can, and this is basically going to be like a siege, and we're going to do little forays out to get resupplied or whatever, whatever it takes. So a lot of analogies kind of coming to mind, but it's going to be a long play, and we're going to get innovative and creative. We just did a new seasonal beer launch completely virtually. This is very unlike what we would normally do, where we're actually physically out in the marketplace and we're engaging directly with people when we're pouring them beers. And we basically had to do the whole thing through Zoom, which is a really weird way to try to, or through something similar to Zoom, a really weird way to try to engage people. We're still trying to engage and create community, even though we're all distant.
That's great. Thank you, Eric.
That's great.
Hey, John, how about you? How are you doing today versus perhaps you first heard from Eric that things weren't going well in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, so then I just got focused. Now I've probably got the range of emotions. Tired. Our team's tired. The last 6 weeks have been intense. Worried. I'm more worried about our ag customers than I was 2 months ago because of supply chain issues. I'm frustrated, not for the bank, but the PPP has wreaked havoc unnecessarily on small businesses. Sad. While community banks are the PPP heroes of the moment, this is going to accelerate bank consolidation. So I think a year or 2 years from now, we're going to see fewer and fewer community banks. But at the same time, I'm invigorated. I mean, I am more bullish on High Plains Bank today than I've ever been, and I'm more optimistic about what we can accomplish. And at a personal level, my family had such a great quarantine. My heart is very full.
That's great. And John, I'll just build on that with a follow-up question. So kind of as you look into your crystal ball, what do you see for the future of the banking industry as well as just overall economy?
Yeah, for the overall economy, I'm actually pretty optimistic. I mean, I think we've got a challenging 2 years to go, but when I listen to these Evergreen Experience and listen to my tugboat colleagues, I'm inspired. I mean, the ability to adapt and to innovate and to pivot is remarkable. I mean, what the story Eric just told about what the craft brewing industry is doing and his foundation is doing, I mean, that's remarkable. I mean, American business people are going to figure things out. And here's the big difference that I see today compared to previous recessions and depressions is, what triggered the Great Depression? What triggered the 2008 recession? It was a reckless financial industry. This time it wasn't our fault. And so our industry is in a better position, relatively speaking, to help with recovery than any previous recession. So that makes me more optimistic that we won't be gumming up the works. But it will be a challenging couple of years to get through the ups and downs of what's ahead.
Great. Thank you, John. And Eric, maybe just take a moment with your crystal ball too.
I know that you appreciate my more bearish outlook as a bookend. I think that, and especially our business, we're a social business. We supply places where people get together. We put beer out there where people get together. So I think 2 years from the get-go is what I told my people a couple months ago. Like, get ready for 2 years, because until we have a vaccine and people feel safe going out, it doesn't matter if the economy is open or not. The initial indications from states that opened earlier than us, we're not even, our restaurants aren't even open in most of the state. So people aren't flocking to them. I mean, you've seen some video from Wisconsin, a little bit crazy, but people are reticent to be exposed to large numbers of people they don't know. And until there is a way for people to feel safe, it's really going to be a huge break on that swath of the economy that is tourism, hospitality, socially driven. And that's a big chunk. Colorado is heavily tourist driven. Breweries are huge tourism magnets. They're big engines in their own little economies. And it's hard for me to be bullish until there is a vaccine. And I think that is going to cause ripples in unexpected ways. I'm glad the banking system is much stronger than it was during the last recession, because that bodes well. They have more elasticity in their ability to help businesses, because I'm directly connected with a number of businesses that have been severely impacted. And that not only from a psychological safety standpoint, but economically. I mean, when you take a shot, spending stops. We're looking at a 40 or 50% drop in economic activity in the second quarter. That's like, it would take a nuclear attack somewhere to cause that normally. It's just a ridiculously large impact. So I think it's 2 years to try to get people where they're actually mostly coming out of their shells and, oh, all right, I don't mind going to a baseball game or a concert or a brewery or a crowded restaurant or a dance club. We sell to all those kind of places. And I'm not going to be selling as much beer to those kind of places until we've got some kind of scientific solution to what's going on, no matter what anyone's pushing on. And then I think it's going to take us several years, 3 to 5, to kind of dig back out, because it will leave a smoking crater. You're going to have empty storefronts from all of the people that can't survive. And you're already hearing about a number of closings. We're seeing closings throughout our industry already. So that leaves landlords and real estate owners with decreased cash flow, profitability, empty spaces. That then flows to banks. Then loans, go bad, and they get into workout, and you just got all these ripples. And I can't predict what all the ripples are, but I just feel that from my perspective in the segment of the economy that we work in, it ain't a V recovery, not from where I sit. I wish it were, and I hope I'm wrong.
Eric, thank you. And that's what I think is so interesting about these conversations we're having, is that there's a full range of experiences here, right? Full range of kind of expectations around the future. And I view everybody's view very valid in this. And John, a little more of an optimistic look for the next year or two. Eric, a little more skeptical, but that's what it is. It's what you guys are seeing, and that's what we're asking for. So thank you both. Thank you for sharing your time, your experiences, your ideas. I think both you guys are inspirations. I love the way the two of you work together too. You guys are really, really good partners. So
I've been telling people your banking relationships matter for a long time, and this has just proved it out for sure.
That's terrific. All right, guys, thank you so much.